Leaves of 3, leave it be, right? Isn't that what you're taught in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts? But wait a minute. This has 1, 2, 3. That, my friends, is an edible plant. That, my friends, is not. All right, welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. Today we are going to talk about poison ivy. I'm going to just dispel some myths that are out there. They come from good intentions, of course, but we'll consider this a kind of our survival myth busting as part of that myth busting series that I sometimes do. But specifically today, we're going to talk about poison ivy. Stay with me now. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with me. So if you're brand new to the channel, I do wilderness survival videos, foraging for wild and medicinal plants, edible plants. I do gardening for food self-sufficiency if this is your first time on the channel. Love to have you subscribe. If you're returning, please remember to drop a thumbs up at some point during the video. Really helps us out in the algorithm. All right, let's go back to our poison ivy here. All right, let's talk about this one first. This is actually wild blackberry. This was the one that I said that was edible. So these leaves, yes, they can be made into a tea, but of course what you're wanting off this one is the fruit. Now, leaves of 3, right? Let's take a look. We see that there's 1, 2, 3, right? The older leaves will actually have 5. So that's one of your identifying traits there that will help you. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So let's shift over here to the poison ivy, which is unfortunately growing right next to it. And you can see the problem. A lot of people make mistakes when they're foraging, and this is why it's so important to train with somebody, to get some books and make sure you're 100% sure when you're foraging, because you can make a potentially deadly mistake. Now the poison ivy, you can see right here, 1, 2, 3. So sometimes that leaves a 3, leave a B is correct, and that's why it's taught that way. But let's go over a couple other ones. And this information here is gathered from various resources that I use, including some medical sites. But let's just go through some of the myths. Poison ivy rash is contagious. That is not true. That is not true. It cannot pass from person to person, specifically by the rash, but the oils can, right? So if you have a lot of the oils from those leaves on your skin and then you shake hands with somebody or you touch their arm or something like that, yes, you can spread it that way. Myth number 2, dead plants are no longer toxic. That is not true. If this plant here was dead and the plants were decaying there, if there's oil still on those leaves, even if they're decaying, they still can give you that rash. Myth number 3, only the leaves are poisonous. That is not true. You should not touch the stem either. The stem, actually you should avoid the roots, the stem, the flowers, the berries, anything that's related to the plant can be potentially poisonous. Now, the level of poisoning is going to vary from person to person. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. My ex-wife was extremely allergic to it, deadly allergic to it, where I honestly, having from my experience, I could brush that a little bit and I probably wouldn't get much of a reaction at all. I'm not going to tempt fate though. That brings us to the next myth, which is that if you've had a good experience with poison ivy before and you didn't get it while all your friends did that walked through the same path, that doesn't necessarily mean you're immune to it. And you still need to respect this plant and take the dangers of it very seriously. Next one is, if you've seen one type of poison ivy, you've seen them all. There's actually a lot of different varieties, and like with so many other plants, it will change. It will look a little bit different based on the area that it's growing and the environmental factors. So poison ivy in my area may look a little different from poison ivy in your area. Next one, and this is a pretty serious one, is there is a myth that is perpetuated sometimes in the survival and outdoor community, where people will say if you chew on leaves, it will boost your immunity. Please do not do that. That is a potentially dangerous, possibly deadly thing to do depending on how sensitive you are to poison ivy. Okay, another one is just being around poison ivy can cause you to have a reaction. That's highly unlikely. However, you can get it from the spreading of the oils. And that means that if you've accidentally got it on your clothes or gardening tools or a friend's clothes and that oil is still present and it touches your skin, yes, you can get the rash, you can get the reaction to it. All right, another one that sometimes people will say is that I'm allergic to poison oak or poison sumac, but I'm not allergic to poison ivy. Well, the truth is it's actually the same chemical in all three plants. So if you're allergic to one, you're probably allergic to all three. Or if you're sensitive to one, you're probably sensitive to all three. You may have had good luck and you didn't get it when you walked through a patch of poison ivy or poison oak or poison sumac, but please be careful and don't assume that you have any kind of immunity. Okay, and the last myth that I'm going to talk about today is the idea that scratching your rash or scratching your blisters is actually going to spread it. If you have washed the area and you've washed the clothes and some time has passed and there's no longer any of those oils on there from the plant, scratching it is not going to spread it. That myth probably came about from people scratching it before they had washed the area thoroughly and got all those oils off. So yes, if you did that, you would be spreading it. I'm going to add one more little tidbit here on the end. So I told you my ex-wife was extremely sensitive to it. She actually got reactions a few times when we were cleaning it up. We had a very large location this was when I was living up in Massachusetts. And we were cleaning up the area and I was burning the poison ivy, and believe it or not, she was not even in the area, but the smoke, something about that, when I was burning it, the smoke, she breathed it in and she had a horrible reaction. So that's only one case study there, so it's anecdotal evidence, right? But I would say be careful about that, especially if you or a family member has any kind of sensitivity as you're trying to get rid of the poison ivy on your property, or if you're having to egress through an area that has poison ivy. Burning it potentially may be a problem. That needs more testing. I'm not going to be the person to test it. Folks, if you enjoyed this video and if you learned something new today, please remember to give me a thumbs up. If you're into outdoor kind of activities, if you like gardening, food self-sufficiency, wilderness survival, and you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.